a channel to inspire you to be more creative in the kitchen and to challenge yourself to create something new. My name is Selena, and I create content based around my passion for cooking and my love for learning new cooking techniques and recipes from others. For today's cooking inspiration, I have decided to implement some recipes that hit close to home. Growing up, a bowl of salsa practically lived on our kitchen table, and my family couldn't get enough of it. So I've come up with a fun way to hopefully spice up my channel. Salsa Saturday, a day where I'll share some of my favorite ways to make homemade salsa, as well as one authentic Mexican dish. Today, we'll be making a salsa verde along with a family favorite, refried beans. So due to social distancing and stay-at-home requirements, today's recipes will strictly include items I currently have and I desperately need to use. So let's get creative. For this week's salsa recipe, I'll be using 1 bell pepper, 2 jalapenos, onion, garlic, 1 can of diced tomatoes, salt, cilantro, but all I have is dried cilantro, chicken bouillon seasoning. Now for the frijoles, or the refried beans. I'll be using 16 ounces of pinto beans, bacon for extra flavor, water, salt, and garlic powder. And remember, if you don't have all of the exact ingredients, then that's okay. Just make this recipe your own and substitute any of the items that you may or may not have. Let's start with our beans. Now, there are many different ways to make beans. You can always make them in a large pot, on the stove, in a crock pot, or in one of my favorites, in the Instant Pot. And for the sake of time and my excitement to roll out Salsa Saturday, we'll be making our pinto beans in the Instant Pot. And I know not everyone has an Instant Pot, so don't worry, I'll be sure to make a video for stovetop beans as well. As always, we'll begin with washing our hands just before we move on to cleaning and sorting our beans. You'll want to pick out any of the bad, shriveled up beans or rocks. The last thing you want is to find yourself biting into a rock. Once you have your beans sorted, we can place them in a strainer and give them a good rinse. This next step is completely optional. I know that many people have their own personal preference when it comes to soaking or not soaking beans before they are cooked. Personally, I do it based on time. If I have the time to soak them, or if I remember to soak them the night before, then I will. But if I don't, then I don't stress about it, I just go with it. In my experience, I don't find much of a difference, but I have read that by soaking your beans, it can speed up the cooking time. It also removes indigestible sugars, which promote excess gas, so I'll let you decide. Back to the recipe though. We can now fill our Instant Pot with 6 cups of water, add in your strained beans, a couple of strips of raw bacon for some extra flavor, salt, and remember, if you are using bacon, you won't need as much salt. A spoon of garlic powder. Place your lid, make sure it's on sealing, and manually put the time to 30 minutes. While the beans are cooking, we can go ahead and start preparing our salsa. So like beans, with salsa, there are many different ways that you can make it. Today in particular, I decided to roast my peppers on the stove. Let's start off with washing our peppers. We can then peel 2 cloves of garlic. And because this recipe is with ingredients I need to use, I'll be using half an onion that is already cut. We can now heat our skillet over medium to high heat. Once the skillet is hot, we can begin placing our peppers, onion, and garlic. You'll want to flip them occasionally as they begin to develop a nice char coating. And once all our vegetables are nice and charred on all sides, we can carefully remove them from the heat and into our blender. Add our seasonings, can of diced tomatoes, place your lid, and give it a blend. Depending on how thick you like your salsa, you may not need to add water if you're using canned tomatoes. I like to give my salsa a taste test to see if it needs any additional salt or spice. Once it meets your taste buds, you can pour in a bowl and enjoy. I like to use bacon grease to refry my beans. I find that it gives them really great flavor. So while we're waiting for our Instant Pot to naturally release its pressure, we're just going to cut up a little bit of onion, a couple strips of bacon, and add it to a heated skillet at medium to high heat. Once the pressure has naturally released from the Instant Pot, we can then carefully transfer it to our skillet with bacon and onion. You won't need all of the bean juice, so feel free to use a strainer. Begin mashing it up. Also, if your beans seem a little dry, feel free to add some of that bean juice to it. That wraps up today's video. I hope I was able to spice up your Saturday. So let me know what you thought of Salsa Saturday. Is it something you would possibly want to see more of? I can assure you that I have plenty of authentic Mexican recipes up my sleeve, especially growing up in a Hispanic household. I'd love to hear your feedback. Until next time, stick around if you're continuing to need a little inspiration on a new recipe to try.